Okay, so we're looking at part two here of solving this problem. So I went ahead and reorganized my inputs and my outputs. So I have my inputs still, and I have my output sitting here in regards to the order in which I want to do this in. Again, charges for snowboards, charges for snowboards with boots, and rental total. I want to show you something real fast. Let's go ahead. This is what I'm talking about. Maybe this might give you a better idea of what this problem is actually going to be looking like, okay? And so in this case here, you see I have a customer rental, first name, last name, boots, and it's going to give us my outputs, my board charges with boots, and my rental charges, okay? And then it's going to have a daily summary. See this daily summary piece here? We'll talk about how we can use these group boxes to kind of help us design our GUI a little bit more intelligently and easier on the eyes to read, all right? But that's what the output would be. And so if I want to run this, so once again, you get a decent idea of what this actually should look like. So if I walked in with my family, okay, that's my ID, and I needed, let's see, 2 with this, and I have 3, I need 5 total, 3 with boots, and so when I hit calculate, it's going to tell me my board charges are $20, 2 times 20. My board with boots charges is $90, 3 times 30, and my total rental charges is $130. And if I'm the very first customer of the day, very boards people would see that this is what they've accumulated so far: $130, two boards have been rented, and 2 boards with boots have been rented, and my average is $130 since I'm the only customer. So let's say I leave and I got my boards, and all of a sudden, I don't know, Dolly Parton walks in, okay, and Dolly wants, she wants, let's see, one board and 1 board with boots, and they rent that whole thing to you. You see, this still stays there, and they calculate that, and so Dolly's bill is $50, 20 this, and you can see that my daily summary now accumulated. Added $50 to the first customer. It added to the totals of the snowboards and snowboards with boots, and then it finally came up with a new average, which was 180 divided by the number of customers for that day, in this case, $90. Does that make sense? Does that help you understand this problem a little bit more and what we're trying to accomplish? Hope so. So let's go ahead and get back to our design. All right. Here we go. And which one am I on here? I think it was that one. There we go. Okay. So what we're going to do, like the next step, is go get my snowboards and snowboards with boots. Okay, I'm pulling this down here. I'm not, heck, we're playing around with this, but we'll go ahead and do it this way. Okay, and the first thing is I'm going to go get my snowboards and snowboards with boots. Now you might be saying, Bob, why aren't you getting the name and the ID? Well, we're not going to be using those in calculations. Okay, so until we actually use them in our programming code. And in this case, I'm actually not going to. Later on, I might, but in this case, I'm not going to. All I'm going to do is just go get the things I need to actually do my processing for my actual program. Does that make sense? All right. So what am I going to do? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solve for outputs one at a time. That's what it says on the design checklist. Solve for outputs one at a time. So that means if I have these in logical order, okay, I'm going to solve for number 1 first. I'm going to solve for charges for snowboards. All right, so how do I do that? I'm going to bring this one up again. And so charges for snowboards equals the number of snowboards from my inputs times 20. Is that it? That's all I got to do? In this particular case, the answer is yes. Remember, we're not doing any conditional programming, so don't have any if statements in anything you're doing right now. That will come in a week or so. But right now, all we're doing is sequential processing. So in this case, charges for snowboards equals snowboards times 20. I go back up to my outputs, okay, and I sit back and I ask myself the question, am I finished with this? Did I solve for this? And if the answer is yes, I put an X by it, pat myself on the back, I don't know, celebrate any way you want to celebrate, and then move on to the next one. You get the idea? One output at a time. And if we do that, instead of being overwhelmed with all these outputs, it all comes together. So just like you solved for just the one output in your previous 2 assignments, you're doing the same thing here, just one thing at a time. I promise you, if you do that, and if you focus on that and actually do it the way I'm telling you to do it, this becomes very easy and you can solve the most complex problem going. Solve for one output at a time. So that means my next output is charges for boots. Let's go ahead and do this one. And this one's going to be charges for snowboards with boots equals snowboards with boots times 30. Did I solve for this? The answer is yes, I did. Yay, okay. Now you may have to think this through and everything else, but for the most part, that's how it actually works. It's not that big a deal. I'm just multiplying the number of snowboards they want times 30, giving my charges for that. Next thing I'm done with these two. I don't have to worry about them anymore. I'm finished with them. I move to my next one. Rental total. Rental total is pretty simple. I'm going to add those two charges together, right? Again, this is almost how I would tell somebody to do this manually, correct? This is how you would do this manually. It has nothing to do with a computer. If all of a sudden you were tasked with, okay, can you write down the instructions on how to add up an invoice for somebody for very boards so I can give it to the employee? You might say, okay, yeah, so what they're going to do is take the customer will come in and tell us how many snowboards they want. Based upon how many they want, you multiply it by $20. And that's those charges. Then you multiply the snowboards with boots they may want by $30, and that's those charges. You add those together, you got the rental total. It's manual, okay? A lot of things we do in programming is automate processes. This is a process. This is how you would do it manually on a piece of paper, and computers never existed. Would you not? All right, so don't make it any harder than that. All right, so we're done with rental total. Yay us. Yay us. Okay, now we gotta get down to these daily totals. This is a little different. I'm not going to lie. It's a little different, but not too much. So what we want to do here is that we want to accumulate these totals throughout the day. Remember how I showed you that in an example? We want to sit back and be able to take, we're going to add two in a total throughout the day so they can see a summary. To do that logically like this, we'll take whatever was there before, the daily total of snowboards. So the first time through this would be 0. Then we're going to add the snowboards to it, and then we replace it. Remember, everything on the left-hand side of the equal sign is replaced by everything on the right-hand side of the equal sign. So we're going to take the snowboards that were there before, add the new snowboards from the new customer that walked in the door, and replace it over here. So first time in, 0. Maybe they rented 2 snowboards. This will now become 2. Next time through, this will be 2. Maybe the new customer rented 3 snowboards. This will now become 5. Does that make sense? Look at that. That's how you accumulate. There's times in programming you need to accumulate totals, okay? And this is how you actually do it. All right? So we'll do that for the snowboards, and I did that. I'm finished with that. I move on to my next one, snowboards with boots. I'm going to accumulate that the exact same way. And now I'm finished with that one. It is cool, one at a time. I'm not even thinking about anything else. My daily charges. Well, my daily charges in this case is my daily charges that were there before, and I'm going to take the rental total from that customer and add it to it to accumulate the rental charges. Make sense? Pretty simple, right? Again, probably how you would write it down on a piece of paper for somebody to tell them how to do it. All right? If this is confusing to you, read over it and make sure you understand. But don't make it computer-esque. Make it how you would do it manually, and everything will come out all right. I'm done with this one. Now we have this last one called average charge per customer. Well, I'm going to take my daily charges and I need to divide it by something to come up with the average, right? So what do I need to divide it by? The number of customers. Well, once again, the computer doesn't know how many customers you have. You need to tell the computer how many customers you have. So based upon that, we need to introduce something called a customer count. So every time we press submit, we're going to add 1 to this customer count, okay? And then by doing that, we will end up with our average. Does that make sense? So yeah, that's logic there. You sit back, some people might say, oh my God, how do I get the average? I don't have that. I don't have the customer count. Well, you got to go get it. Once again, the computer doesn't know anything. You got to tell it. And so there's going to be times when you're going to come across situations like this, you might need to introduce a new variable to calculate. And so how can we get the customer count? Well, every time a customer rents something, that's a customer, okay, based upon how many they rented, who cares? Okay, a customer is the person paying. So if they rent 5 of them, it's not 5 customers, that's 1 customer renting 5 snowboards. Does that make sense? And so I'm going to accumulate that customer count every time we press that submit button, and then I'll use that to actually come up with my average for my daily total charges to customer. And then I am done with this one. I get to this point right here, and I say, all right, I don't have any more outputs to do. Am I finished? And the answer is, yes, we're finished. And that's the beautiful thing of that. Okay? Pretty cool? All right. And so there you are right there. We just gone through and actually went through this piece right here and actually understood what it is we needed to do, and we have everything. All right. Our next step is talking about variables. Okay. What's going to be our variables? All right. And so what I want to do before we get into this is I want to talk to you about something that we need to talk about at this point in time. That sounded kind of weird, but we need, and so in doing so, the next video is going to talk about this concept called scope. So please take a listen to that, and then we'll come back on another video and identify the variables and identify the data types, and then also identify that new concept called scope.